on Zoom.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's program, What Kids Need Now. My name is Jill Savitt, and I'm the President and CEO of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. This program is part of our campaign for equal dignity. So we're about to begin another month of COVID-19 pandemic, mostly staying inside. Millions are unemployed. Protesters have taken to the streets to call for change in the way the country is policed. We face one of the greatest moments of uncertainty many of us have ever experienced. As confusing as this moment is for adults, for children, it has to be overwhelming. This is more so for kids in underserved communities who are dealing not only with the virus and not going to school and not seeing their friends and being cooped up with their families, but they're also seeing the horrifying videos of police violence, and they're hearing really frank conversations about race. Tonight, we're going to explore how adults can support children best right now, their children and other children in the community. Joining me tonight is Kwame Johnson, the president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metro Atlanta. It is the largest and most effective youth mentoring agency in the state of Georgia. He directs a team of 50+ people who provide support to more than 1,400 youth in one-to-one mentoring relationships that have powerful and positive effects, allowing them to achieve their full potential. At the age of 19, Kwame decided to leave Hampton University to become a social entrepreneur and has dedicated his life to service and helping young people succeed. He found his passion while incarcerated during his senior year of high school. During that challenging time, he decided to change his life and made history by becoming the first youth to take the SAT in jail. He worked in youth development in Washington, D.C., and was the national program director at the Center for Neighborhood Enterprise. He focused on helping residents of low-income neighborhoods address the problems in their communities. He has received national recognition for his work, including the 2008 Social Entrepreneurial Program of the Year Award from the Manhattan Institute. He is a member of the 2020 Leadership Atlanta class and was recently inducted into the 2018 Atlanta Business Chronicles 40 Under 40 class. He is the recipient of the coveted 2019 Morehouse College Dr. Joseph Draper Service Award and the first non-alumnus to receive the honor. Kwame, it is a pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Jill. Good to be here.
Our second guest this evening is Cosmo Miller. Cosmo is an Atlanta-based voiceover talent who also specializes in event emceeing for events of all types. He has voiced ads, if you listen to ads for Hillshire Farm, Publix, Burger King, Skittles, and the Black Entertainment Network, among many other clients, so you might recognize his voice. And he does MC work for a variety of major bands. Variety of major brands. Cosmo is also the voice of permanent installations in museums, such as the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and a place that I have heard is an incredible history museum in Atlanta called the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. But most importantly for this evening, Cosmo is a big, and that means a big brother, a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters. The mentors are bigs, and the kids they mentor are called littles. So we're going to talk with him tonight about that experience. Cosmo, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So Kwame, I'm going to start with you. COVID has forced organizations around the world to look at providing services to their constituents in new ways. What has Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metro Atlanta done in response to this disruption the virus has caused?
A great question, Jill, and I just want to first thank you for enabling us to have this opportunity to talk about the work. I'm looking forward to it, and Cosmo's a great guy in general. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say. But yes, we've all been shocked by COVID. We are going through a pandemic that we've never faced before. We had to pivot as an organization, and I'm just happy to share that our team was very eager and figured out different ways, and we've taken everything virtual. So currently right now, you can become a big brother or a big sister. You can become a little in our program, all virtually. We're also supporting bigs and littles virtually. It's not ideal, but we're making the best of what we can do. Our staff are right on the front lines. When all this happened, we were getting calls from families about resources around food, housing, all the different basic needs that our families that are struggling with today here in Atlanta, but also across the country. And our staff, through our network of nonprofit partners, are able to connect them to different resources. And I tell people all the time, you may have a food bank or a organization in your community, but if you don't have a connection to that organization, they could be, 100 miles away. So organizations like ours are able to provide that resource, provide that referral, but also provide that relationship where if I reach out to Kyle at the food bank, it's a much different conversation when one of our families reaches out and makes a connection. So we're playing a big role in that. We're staying in our lane to still focus on mentoring, but we're partnering with different organizations that provide these basic needs that families need. We know that during this time of social isolation, when children are at home, they don't have supports of school environment, interaction with caring adults, it's more imperative that they have mentors. So we're urging our bigs to continue to do virtual outings. We have different connections with organizations where we provide different things for the bigs and littles to do. So for example, John Collins, who's the power forward for the Atlanta Hawks, did a virtual workout with our littles. They were on, outside having fun, mixing it up. We're also encouraging our bigs to do homework and help our littles interact and do different things online because they're now at home being forced to do different things they weren't doing before in math and different subjects. So our bigs have really stepped up. Cosmo is doing it himself. You'll hear from him directly. But we pivoted as an organization, and we've learned a lot through this process on how we can operate not only today, but also moving forward. During this period, we were actually in the process of moving our headquarters from Midtown to most likely the West End and being more embedded in the community. So it's not ideal to go through that and be, selling a building during COVID, but we're continuing to march along, and we're very close to actually moving our headquarters. And then our plan is to set up satellites in different parts of Atlanta that are struggling the most. We've learned that one location in Midtown is not enough. Families have challenges all around the city. And I recently learned that Atlanta has the most suburban poverty in the country. So we know as an organization to serve all 12 counties, we have to make sure we're set up in different parts. And that's what we're working on now. So we're continuing to move forward. Hats off to our team. They've done a great job to pivot during COVID.
So Kwame, just tell me if you can, how you think the kids are doing. What do they talk to you about? What issues do you hear from your staff and from bigs how are they managing all of this?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Kids and families that I've worked with throughout my career are very resilient. So many of them are continuing to just push forward, but it's definitely a very challenging time. You're sitting at home all day. You can just imagine being a young person that maybe not being the most supportive home, where your parents are not around as much, or, worst case scenario, being in an abusive home. So you can just imagine what those kids are feeling like, where they had an outlet to go to school, to be with their friends, to be with their teachers, to be with different organizations in their school, to do different after school programs. All that's been taken away. So we're trying our best to continue to provide a level of support during these tough times. And we're just hopeful, in the next few months or whatever amount of time that, in the beginning of the year, we can start to get back to normal. But families are really hurting. If you were struggling before, you're really struggling now.
Yeah, thanks for that. Cosmo, so tell us about how your little is doing.
Well, I am a little concerned. I do check in with him. We've been checking in periodically. We'll do, FaceTime over the phone. But I'm a little concerned that he's finding creative ways to keep himself busy and things like that. I definitely engage him on the phone and talk to him and stuff like that. But I think that's more of a tease to him. Like, yeah, great to hear from you, but it was so much more fun when we were at the park. And, it's just a big adjustment for him. So I think he's doing very well considering an 8-year-old child whose world has been turned literally upside down. I would say he's doing considerably well. And we just, like Kwame said, we just have to make the adjustments and hope for the best.
So how has it changed your relationship? How are you interacting with him?
I think it has kind of made me become a little bit more introspective. I've noticed I'm asking him more probing questions now. What did you do today? What did you watch? What is that movie about? What cartoon? Did you see your friends? What did you guys talk about? I'm just trying to dig for any little thing that's gonna, you know, I guess it's for my own comfort to give me a feeling of not so much intense worry about him, you know? So it's like, I'm always kind of, okay, what'd you do? Oh, was that fun? Okay. And it's kind of, I think it's more reassurance for me.
I mean, I think kids are absorbing a lot of their parents' anxiety. This is challenging. It's overwhelming for everybody, and
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine how a kid can begin to process this. So, for instance, the video of George Floyd, the videos that this is on the internet. We know kids have access to all of this, even more so because we've told them it's school. So they're in front of the computer all day, and they see these really devastating videos. Kwame, what have you talked to your bigs or your staff about helping kids process this?
Yeah, it's a lot, right? And we've leaned into this as an organization to stand against racism and police brutality. You know, 97% of the young people we serve are young people of color. So we knew as an organization we had to stand up and provide resources to our bigs because they were reaching out and saying, you know, how do I have these conversations? And what we've decided that we're going to do is make sure we're more intentional about the training we provide bigs and also our staff, starting with our staff and making sure they're properly trained on all these topics, you know all the different terms and are well aware of just the history of racism in our country so that they're well informed. So, you know, as it relates to adults and parents and bigs, and when they talk to young people about any topic, I typically start with an exercise that I'll do with you guys and see if you all can pass it. What I'll have you do is you can take your finger here, and what I want you to do is just listen to what I say. You know, follow what I'm doing, and you take your finger, put it up high over your head, you bring it down. Just follow what I'm doing, and put the finger on your chin. Yeah, I put my finger on my nose. Most people will put their finger. I told you to put your finger on your chin, but I put my finger on my nose. Most people will actually put their finger where I did, because kids actually watch what you do, not what you say. So the message to anyone, any adult, whether it's a big or a parent, make sure you act out what you're saying to young people. If you're telling them treating people bad or unequal is not good, but you do that when you're at the grocery store or you do that on the phone, you're not preaching what you say. You're not practicing what you say. So that's the first step. You know, what I also tell our bigs and our parents is to educate yourself. You know, even as a black man with a bald head, I'm not an expert on race. And through all of this, I had to definitely, you know, do a lot more research, in particular about the history here in Atlanta. Because when you're having these conversations, you want to make sure you're well informed and you're speaking facts, because there are a lot of untruths and lies out there. And so you want to educate yourself. There's a ton of resources. Georgia Broadcasting, the station has a great website, public broadcasting. If you go there, a lot of great resources for parents to check out. And what I also do is I encourage people to tell stories. So tell your own personal stories, situations where you've experienced racism, because I think through stories we learn. You know, if you go back to cavemen and cave women, we learn through stories. And as humans, I think that's how we communicate the best. So the more that you can tell stories about actual events that you've experienced and what you did about those events and how they were wrong and how they should be changed, or experiences of others that you know about, kids learn through stories.
Yeah. So Cosmo, can you tell us, have you talked with your little about race and George Floyd and all of that's happening?
No, I have not as of yet. And as I was explaining to Kwame and the guys last week in a different panel, I actually am more comfortable talking to his mother first to try to kind of take her approach as to things. We just kind of had a whole travel crisis. She was trying to get him out of the country, and we decided not to do that so he wouldn't get stuck in Mexico. So just a week before last, so really went a good time and all this turmoil. And so I've been saying I need to go on and start to close in on his mom, have the conversation with her first, because he's only 8.
Right.
So I kind of want to gauge how comfortable she is with the information, you know? So yeah, I think I've been a little bit more apprehensive about that than I'd like to admit, but I think it's time for me to go on and make that happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would imagine, Kwame, a lot of bigs have to feel that way. These are huge issues. They're a mentor in this child's life, but not the parent. And checking in with the parent about the parent's approach seems to be the best way to go about it. What do you say in your trainings about this to bigs?
Yeah, we barely touched on these topics in the past, and this was a wake-up call for all of us. So when you become a big, the first step is to go to an orientation similar to what we're doing now, where you hear about all it takes to be a big. You got to commit to a year. You have to do a couple outings per month. You have to be over 21. You have to have transportation. These are basic things we ask for. Then we ask you to do an application where we get to know your background and those type of things. And then we sit down with you for an hour and interview you. We ask you questions about your childhood. We ask you questions about your preferences. What kind of young person do you want to mentor? And all these different things, because all these things are important when we actually make a match. And then we do training with our bigs. And typically it was around child safety and mandated reporting and ideas for outings and things that you all can do together. And we just barely touched on these topics. So what we've decided as an organization, for one, we need to make sure our staff are trained. So we're going through that process now. And then we're actually going to train our bigs to make sure they're educated on these topics. So when they go out there, and also make sure that they're the right fit, because we look at a lot of different things, when we make a match. Are you fit for a child? Have you had issues in your past with children or your own children? These are all sort of determinations we make. Because when you think about it, we're asking a parent to allow someone like Cosmo, who they don't know at the beginning, to come and pick them up, their child up. Anyone who has children, that's a very scary thing, to let a stranger come pick up your child. So we want to make sure all of our bigs are properly prepared and are trained on these things. And if we feel like someone is not the right fit, someone's not about equity and fairness, we're not going to match that person. Because in many cases, I'm matching a white male with an African-American boy. And if that person is not educated and they don't understand biases and they don't understand equity and they don't understand systemic racism, they may bring that young person into a situation and not even know that that person is being subject to something that's very challenging. They could go to the store, for example, in that white male's neighborhood, and that young person could be being profiled by somebody in that store. And they may not even pick up on it. So they wouldn't even be able to be ready or enabled to come to the defense of their little. So these are the things, the conversations we're having now as an organization. And if you think about it, we have roughly 1,400 young people in our program, 1,400 bigs of all races. And in many cases, those are interracial matches. We have different races coming together, which I think is a beautiful thing. So we have an opportunity as an organization, unlike any other, where we have different races coming together, where they can learn about each other, they can hopefully become better, and hopefully, be a part of the solution to systemic racism in the country.
Can you tell us about some of the changes you have seen since COVID, since the movement for Black Lives, in the relationships between bigs and littles? What have you heard that's different from how it was before?
So we have a program in particular called Bigs in Blue, where we actually match police officers and paramedics and security officers, firemen, firewomen. We're actually going to change the name to badges, bigs and badges, because it's not just police, it's all types of, service individuals. And it's a popular program all around our country. I've been doing work in communities all my career. Early in my career, I did a lot of gang intervention work, and police were a big part of that conversation. The right police and community-minded police and those type of things in different places I did that. So that is definitely going to have to take a pause, and we're thinking about how we move forward and change that program to make it better. We're in touch with the At Promise Center. They do a lot of great work with police officers. So we're working together to figure out how can we bridge some of these divides that are now right in front of us, where you have well-intended officers that want to get involved with young people, and particularly young people at that Promise Center who have already had some interaction with the criminal justice system. And through that mentoring relationship can change their lives. So that is a big area that I think there was a change for us, because we have police officers in our program. Chief Shields, for example, great big sister in our program for many years, mentoring young people. And that's something we're working through now as I speak. That comes to mind.
Yeah. Cosmo, what made you want to become a big?
Hypocrisy. Me being the hypocrite.
How so?
So I worked for a marketing agency about 10 or 12 years ago, and I was one of the account managers, and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metro Atlanta was one of the clients. So they hired us to put together a team of brand ambassadors, you know, to go out and do street promotions to try to draw more bigs in. So they sent us to different events and things like that. And it dawned on me towards the end of the campaign, you know, things had not been going well, and things have been fine for me, but being a middleman, I understood the translation of how really a mentoring agency and how a urban marketing experiential agency kind of needed to figure out what they really needed together. And one of the things I realized, I said, wait a minute, it's a bunch of us going out here representing this brand, and our job is to get someone to sign up to be a big, right? So why am I trying to get people to do things that I am not doing myself?
Right.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks towards the end of the campaign. We've got an entire street team of 10 or 12 people here. None of us are bigs. And so as the years rolled by, I said, I want to become involved in some mentoring program. And then through the Morehouse Alumni Association, they had a contact with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I said, as soon as we had the meeting, the guy came, I said, I got to do it. That's it. I've been meaning to do it. I got to do it.
And have you had more than one little?
No, just my first one. But I am full of remorse that I did not join the organization earlier.
And so tell us about what it's been like. You know, here you don't have kids of your own, and
Right.
now you have this person in your life, a little, who's looking at you and watching what you do, as Kwame was saying. And how did that change you? What has it been like for you?
I think it's been great because, you know, I mean, kids change everyone as an adult. They make you a more mature adult. They make you a more responsible adult. They make you a more careful adult. I drive differently. I talk differently, you know, all of these different things. And I think that it's just a great stepping stone for those of us who don't have kids yet to get prepared for that, but still be able to give something back to a child's life and make a difference in a child's life. So I really enjoy that. And one thing I did fail to mention before, pardon the brain fart, part of my complication with dealing with the race issue, but one of the great things, as Kwame mentioned before about the organization, we do bring folks together. So my little is not African-American, he's actually Latino. And so that's why that was a very interesting barrier that I'm about to cross with his mother to see how comfortable he is. But I have been preparing them all year because I have always been giving them different information from Black History Month. I wouldn't just teach him typical Black history stuff. I would also teach him Mexican Black history, because Mexico has an entire pantheon of Black historical information of generals and warriors and all kind of folks that a lot of Mexican people just don't know about. It's just a hidden history. And so a lot of that stuff has been coming out of the last 10 or 15 years. There's been a huge amount of attention being given to the Afro-Mexican community as well. And my little is definitely a mixed person. That's what Mexico means, mixed. You know, you're African, Native, and European. So I've been helping him learn about several different aspects of Afro-Mexican culture, and helping him learn how the indigenous peoples there helped the African slaves that the Spanish brought them when they got there. So we've kind of been building to this thing. So, you know, it's really good. His mother's very appreciative of it. I can tell she's like, wow, I didn't know that. So, and that's great. You know, and sometimes you may learn things about yourself from another source in which you least expected. So, I mean, I think it's just an awesome learning experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Even the parent of the little.
Yeah. Kwame, how many kids are without bigs without bigs right now? How many littles are searching for bigs?
A few hundred. When I joined the organization, a few years ago, our waiting list was huge. We had over 500 kids on our waiting list, and most of them were boys. And now that number is closer to 300, roughly, I would say 200 boys, 100 girls. And boys tend to wait the longest. We had a big partnership with Mayor Bottoms this past year, which was called 100 Men to Mentor Challenge. great partnership. We got over 200 men to step up. We're always trying to recruit men in particular from the west side, south side of town. So if anyone is in those areas, we love to talk to you. But yeah, it's a challenge. We have families who are coming in, single moms coming in and saying they need help. I was matched with a young man named Anthony. I was his big brother, and we asked for a year commitment. And when you start to become a big, so like Cosmo, I couldn't be the CEO and talking about this work and not do it myself. And I'm actually in the process of being matched with another young man. And Anthony's mom was a single mom at the time, and she got married recently and very happy and has a great future ahead of her. And she came and said, you know what, Kwame, you got a lot of boys on your waiting list. It may make more sense for you to work with another young person. And so our relationship changed from big little to now friendship. So we have, people like me who've done it multiple times. We have bigs who've been in relationships for 10 years, 20 years. Some of our bigs and littles have actually gone into business together. Flip Burger over on Howell Mill was started by a big and a little. So just very, very special stuff. But the waiting list is an ongoing challenge. Our most successful partnership was with the mayor's office, where Mayor Bottoms just issued a challenge to the whole city and said, hey, we need more men. For some reason, I don't know what it is, women step up more than men. I think men sometimes have a challenge with the commitment. They'll do it, but it's, man, I got to commit. I don't, and the commitment is important because we know that if you come in a child's life and leave within a year, you'll actually do more damage. It's just best practice. We've been doing this, our 60 years. You can see behind me, it's our 60-year anniversary as an organization at making matches.
Yeah.
Can I just tag on to Kwame's comment?
Sure.
Yeah.
Any potential bigs that are watching this video and listening out here, I got to tell you, your biggest challenge is going to be not maximizing the expectation regulation that Big Brothers Big Sisters has in place, which is spending twice with the little 2 times a month. That's going to be your biggest challenge. You're gonna be so cool with your little. You're going to hang out with him 3 or 4 times. You're going to find yourself, hey, let's do this. Hey, have you seen that? Hey, da, 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 da. And so there is that regulation of managing expectations in place. But I'm going to tell you, most bigs, most men, contrary to what your beliefs are, that will be your biggest challenge.
Yeah. So, talking about, do you train the littles on how to interact with the big?
We don't necessarily do a training for the littles, but they go through an enrollment process with our organization. And the big part of that process is actually to have a conversation with the young person one-on-one without the parent in the room and say, hey, is this something you want to do? Because we know that a mentoring relationship is not going to work if this is mom or dad forcing the young person into the program. So we make sure the young person is informed about what it is, what they're getting themselves into, so that they are very clear on, you have to commit to this too. You have to commit to those two outings that Cosmo mentioned. That's the minimum. Cosmo's actually doing way more than that, which is great, and most do. But we want to make sure that this relationship lasts. So we spend a lot of time on the front end talking to the little and the big about the match. When we match a young person with a big, we actually tell them ahead of time about the person. So we may have 3 potential bigs, and we'll say, this is the person, this is what they're all about, this is their story, this is what they like to do, they're into sports, they're into this. And then the little and the family will have a chance to make a decision. And then we'll do the same thing with Cosmo. We'll say, Cosmo, this is a few different littles that are in your neighborhood, because we match based on preference and location. We're not going to match you if you live in Midtown Atlanta. We're not going to match you with a young person that lives 20 miles south of the city. We want to make sure you're within distance of each other so that match can last. So we have a lot of conversations with the little before they're matched with a mentor about what they're trying to get out of it. What challenges are they having? What are some of their goals? And then when we match them, we fit that right with the big and talk to them about how they can help them through the process.
Right. So you recently, I believe, were on a big call or follow up with a bunch of the littles, and you got to hear how they're doing. What did you hear? What were they reporting as to how life is going for them?
It's a mixed bag. Frustration of what's going on. confusion, not knowing the history. And then some just weren't aware of the problem. I think some young people are interacting very differently than us adults are. And I think that's
didn't know race, didn't have a problem around race.
It wasn't like a big issue for them. They didn't feel like it was their top priority, you know, and it wasn't that big of a challenge for them. So a mixed bag. And what we did through that conversation, and we've had two now, we called it the chat. We just provided a venue for kids just to talk. No adults, just talk about what's on their heart and what they're talking about, because that helps a lot. We've done that with our staff, where folks can just vent and talk about what they're feeling. And we set ground rules. We said no one can, you know, comment on someone else's comment or challenge someone else's comment or say you're right or wrong. It's not about that. Everybody's perception and everyone's experience is their experience. And we wanted to honor that. So I'm hopeful from the conversations for the next generation. I think, you know, some of the older generations, even including myself, where I'm a millennial, I think it's going to take some time. But I think I'm hopeful for the young people of today, and that they may be the first generation that puts racism not behind us, but eliminates it to a point where it's not as big a challenge that it is today.
Yeah, so I'm the mom of a son who's now 20, but I remember very well when he was younger. It can be hard to pry information out of young men.
Yes.
They don't always tell you how they're feeling. They retreat into other things. And so in trying to match up young boys with bigs, you know, it could be tough to crack that shell of a boy. What kind of advice do you give the bigs about getting these young men to talk about how they feel, to share?
You know, and Cosmo probably can relate to this. You know, when I was matched with Anthony, I knew this going in, but a part of the training we provide bigs is, hey, don't rush this. Take some time. This is a relationship. It's not going to happen overnight. In particular, kids who've been through trauma and different things, even as adults, you know, it may take you a little bit of time to warm up and tell somebody about what's really going on. So I think it's being patient, building a relationship over time. And then as that relationship builds, the young person will feel more comfortable to share things that are going on. But we actually discourage bigs from going right in and saying, hey, tell me your life story, tell me what's going on, tell me what, you know, because that will actually turn a young person off and make the relationship very hard to repair from that, in particular with boys. You have to take time and get to know them and spend that time.
Yeah. Cosmo, was that your experience? Has that been your experience with your little?
Well, my little is prepubescent, so I'm definitely preparing for changes to start to happen, and you know, things like that. And you know, I'm just preparing to be, you know, just a good teammate with his mother. His mother and I have a great relationship. You know, we you know, she trusts me. You know, she enjoys my feedback and stuff like that, and she's a go-getter, you know, and I love a hardworking, independent mother, you know, and that just makes me want to help even more as well. So yeah, I mean, I also want to say that really Kwame has done a great job of training the match support specialist team. That's an important element at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And if there's ever an issue that I've had, a problem, a question, anything, I can call my match support specialist right up, email him, and I'm supposed to talk to him a couple of times a month anyway. So he just calls me regularly just to check on me, see how we're doing. And the organization as a whole has done great, just in even showing love to us bigs, you know, because we're affected by COVID as well. I've had several different life crises befall me. And so the organization as a whole has shown support to us as well, too. So I think that that's a part of really the big strength, is not just being able to show someone how to support the littles, but provide that same support to the big as well.
Yeah, Kwame, that was very interesting. What you said at the beginning is that you're a connector with families to these other services. Where else has Big Brothers Big Sisters had to step in and help families out? I imagine food security or health, access to health. What other kinds of ways has Big Brothers Big Sisters maybe gone out of its lane of people's perception of the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question because we thought long and hard about what are we best equipped to do. And I've been in this nonprofit sector for my whole career since I was 19. And my criticism of the sector sometimes is that it's not organized, there's a lot of redundancies, and there's not enough collaboration. So we were very intentional to not become a food bank. We wanted to partner with a food bank. It would take me a lot of time and my staff a lot of training to understand how to run a food bank. And I decided as a leader of the organization to partner. So that is what we've done. We partner. We partner with groups that have the track record, that have the resources. And that actually in some ways has hurt us funding wise. I'm not a basic needs organization for a lot of funders. I'm not handing out checks for rental assistance. I'm not giving out food. I'm not doing any of those other things that are basic needs right now. It's like when a hurricane hits a place, you know, there's things that are like immediate at that time. And then as things get better, there's other services that are more important. I see our service as essential, just like any other service, but I understand why resources are going to food banks and other groups that are doing different things. So I was very intentional as a leader to say, you know what? They need to do what they've been doing all these years. And there's no need to recreate the wheel. There are tons of great organizations in Atlanta that are doing great work around basic needs. And we took the position as an organization to lift up those organizations, even if it hurt us financially.
Yeah. So now we're getting into school time, and a lot of schools are not opening. Other schools are opening, and kids, you know, they're not as at risk for COVID, although they can get the disease and spread it. What about COVID and Big Brothers Big Sisters? What are your policies on that? Are you encouraging people to be together in person, or are you keeping it virtual?
We're keeping it virtual right now. We actually launched a virtual program in the midst of all this. Access is still a challenge. We're working through that. We actually surveyed our families, and about 70% have access. Now that could be just one cell phone in the home, and we know that's not sufficient. So that's still a challenge. There's organizations like Power My Learning that provides laptops to families and other organizations. So we're working through those challenges with those groups to make sure our families have access. So we're continuing to promote virtual. If a family does want to if a big and a little want to get together, which some of them are, we're encouraging them to follow the CDC recommendations. And like Cosmo's mentioned many times today already, make sure you check with mom or check with dad. And if they're fine with it, then we're supporting that. So we wanted to provide that level of guidance. We're following what schools do. So as things change, and we learned a lot over the past 2 weeks, we were thinking schools are going to be back. Now we know they're not. So we're planning around that and thinking about what does the first semester look like in our schools. We have a program where we actually bring young people into corporations. Cox is one of our best partners, biggest partners, should I say. And we have 30, 40 young people going to Cox throughout the month to not only be mentored by a big, but also to get exposure to career. So that's going to change, that all these different things. And we're thinking, how can we take our virtual platform that we have now and plug in, whether it's children at home or back in the classroom. But I think we're going to be in this virtual space for a while. So we're going to have to continue just to be innovative and make the best of it and just weather this storm the best that we can.
Yeah, I just want to give a note to everyone listening. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, you can put it in the Q&A. You can put it in the Q&A or the chat at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a place for a chat and there's a place for Q&A. You can put questions in either of them. So we have a question. Yeah, what is the name of the organization providing laptops to families?
Power My Learning is the name of the organization, and they actually just changed their name. So I'm going to make sure I'm saying the right name now. They've been Power My Learning for a very long time. But they partner with schools and provide devices and also training to young people, which is a great thing, and families on how to use it in the home for learning.
Okay.
Now it's called Inspire EDU. Inspire EDU is the name, and a great organization to connect with.
Great. Cosmo, what would you say has been the most rewarding part of being a big?
The most rewarding part of being a big, seeing my or hearing my little try to use some of the big words that I teach him in latter conversations. And that's not for my own personal ego, but it's the satisfaction of knowing that he wants to learn. I
Right.
teach, not big words, but things like responsibility, advertising. And so I started shooting him, Merriam-Webster's word of the week and stuff like that. And so he may try to use it and get it wrong, but the effort of that means that he values education. And I think that that's the biggest gift that I can give my little. And the fact that he values it makes me feel good and makes me feel like that my time is worth the effort.
Has he mentioned at all how he feels about not going back to school, about what he's worried about or thinking about?
Julio is a very rather stoic 8-year-old. So he is not even sure if he is going back to school. He's not aware as of 5 or 6 days ago when I last texted him right before the weekend hit. He was not sure as to whether they're going to be virtual or live yet. So he's not sure yet. And, I'm not sure if he really cares as long as he can keep watching some cartoons at his own command.
Yeah.
But I told his mother that I would definitely be helping him out, assisting any kind of assistance that they needed, virtual-wise. If it just gets too boring, give me a call. I'm always happy to help do homework or whatever.
So we have a question. She says, there's a woman writing, just curious, as a 55-year-old white woman, should I even consider being a big? Also, if I wasn't in the program, what are ways to support kids who have to go to school virtually but may have hurdles going to school virtually?
Great question. So we accept bigs of all ages. As long as you're able to get around and have energy and want to do it, we'll have you. Older bigs actually are some of our best bigs because they have more time on their hands. They're more settled in their career. They're not going to move tomorrow. Some of them are retired and they have even more time. So we welcome you. Again, a lot of our older bigs are very successful bigs. We're doing a virtual backpack drive right now. So we're still going to give out backpacks with school supplies to our families. This year, we do that every year. So we're recruiting and asking for those donations now. So if you go to our website, you'll see a way to get connected. I think just making sure families have these basic needs is continuing to be, I think, a priority across the board. So any way you can plug in to organizations that are focused on basic needs, I think is super important.
And tutoring, helping kids with homework, teaching kids things, are does Big Brothers Big Sisters do that, or do you have partner organizations that you work with who can provide that tutoring? I mean, I think a lot of people are worried that kids are falling behind and we're not able to keep track of what individual kids are doing because everyone is so isolated in their homes.
Yeah, we encourage our bigs to help their littles with schoolwork. However, we don't say that you're going to be a tutor coming into this, because when you say tutor versus mentor, it just is a very different conversation, and some people are intimidated by the math and all the stuff kids are learning now. But being a guide or support, asking questions, if there is some homework you can help with, that's great. So yeah, but we connect with the schools that the children are in through our match support specialists that Cosmo mentioned, and we find out what they recommend for the resources, because tutoring sometimes is very specific to the topic, the school, the curriculum, all those different things. So we work with the schools a lot on that.
Yeah, so that was a broader question that came in. What ways do you work with the school system? So that's one, trying to figure out what the assignments are and how bigs can help kids in that way. But yes, what other ways do you work with the schools?
So we actually have programs in schools where we actually have bigs going to schools at their leisure, working with the school administration to mentor kids at the school. So we have sort of 3 different programs. Our community-based program that Cosmo's a part of, where they hang out and do things on the weekends, after hours. We also have our program I mentioned where we bring kids into companies where they can get exposure to career. And then we have our site-based programs in schools like Thomasville Elementary School, where we have bigs who actually on their lunch break, when they have time, they may work in the city but live outside the city, and it's hard for them to mentor, so they can do it during the workday and go to a school. You know, we try to create environments where bigs can plug in regardless of their schedule. So yes, those programs in school are great. We have a curriculum that the big follows with the young person. They work with them on different topics and schoolwork when it's appropriate. And then they also build that relationship during that time as well.
Someone is asking, on average, how long does it take for a new big to get matched with a little?
It varies. And a lot of it depends on you, you know, in you following the steps and submitting, you know, your application and doing your training and, you know, getting us your references. But I would say on average of 3 to 6 months. We also, you know, have to make sure we have a young person in your area. So when you go to our website and inquire, there'll be zip codes and we'll be able to match you accordingly. So if you live, say, for example, if you are live in Alpharetta, chances are we're not going to have a little in that area. So you may wait longer to be matched. So once you go through the process, we actually have to find the right young person that wants to be matched with you and you want to be matched with them. And so that could take a little while as well. So, but we talk through all that during orientation and make sure you're well aware and we have ongoing conversation, but it's going to take some months. So just mentally prepare for that. And also think about, you know, what are you planning next year in 21? If you're planning to move or you got a new job and it's going to have you on the road 90% of the time, think about that before you sign up to be a big.
What have you heard, Cosmo, do you interact with other bigs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have, up until COVID, we had tons of social events, and a good bit of those events were just for bigs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what is your experience, and what have you heard from other bigs about the effect of being a big on their lives, on their own lives?
Everyone has that similar sense of satisfaction. I have one friend where she's not satisfied with her relationship because of the parent. You know, she wanted to do more. Sometimes you do have these relationships. I suggested to her perhaps that sometimes you have a situation where a big may come in, they're doing these things, and some parents may get a little, you know, a little jealous. And so, you know, you have those types of situations, but every big I know has a pretty good relationship with their parents, with the little's parents. They're happy with the influence that they're posing on them. And everyone is just, I think, really the matching process here, that magic is where it becomes evident, you know? I mean, because it just really, you can't always just say, well, you know, you can look at someone's address, you can say, yeah, they're the same ethnic group and da-da-da-da. We can do that all day. But I think the magic that Kwame and the team puts in is really utilizing that type of ethic with the match support specialists, you know, with this mentality of, hey, we're not just going to match up demographics and zip codes. That's just the beginning of the process. But they really look at the people. What is Julio like? What is Cosmo like? You know, I mean, I'll admit my interview had and as it should, felt like just a very lightweight psychological conversation. You know, they had to know who I was. What was I about? You know, what are you dealing with in life? You know, part of this process, I think that we as bigs, we want to do it and we come to the table, but it also has to be evaluated as to whether we're still a good fit for the organization. It's not just about wanting to sign up, and that's great. I want to say, just want to touch to a point to the person that said she's a 55-year-old white woman. What will she be able to offer? Well, A, you're 55. You can tell that person you were born at the time when one of our greatest anti-racism leaders was assassinated. And you also, as a young adult, you lived through the Rodney King riots. So you've seen a similar riot situation to the George Floyd situation, as the Rodney King situation did kind of spread to other cities. So you do have something to share. Everyone has something to contribute.
Yeah. Tell us again, how many boys and how many girls are in the program? What's the breakdown of boys and girls?
Roughly 200 boys and about 100 girls, spread across 12 counties. We have a lot of young people waiting south of the city, west of the city. some up in Gwinnett. But anyone who's hearing today that wants to learn more, and I can get into that, Jill, at whatever point, we will tell you. Everyone has something to offer. Yes, there is a process. Child safety is number one for us. We are in the business of bringing an adult together with a child, so there are a lot of things you got to make sure is right to do that. We're bringing two different families together, two different adults together, and that's why it's important to, as Cosmo mentioned, that you have a match support specialist who is like your coach, who works with you through the life of the match. Issues come up, conversations need to be had. We're a middleman. We check in with the family, and we also check in with you, and we're there to support you, and that's very unique for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Majority of mentoring programs do not provide you with a coach, and they do not provide you with your training. They connect you with a young person, but you'll learn as you go through this and you do this, you need support. It's something that's very intentional, and you want to be successful. You want to set up goals, and not only just spend time with this young person, build a relationship and help that young person reach their goals.
Yeah. Anything more you want to say about that? And then I'll ask you one final question, Kwame, before we go. But anything else about people who are interested in becoming a big?
Yeah, I would tell them to go to our website, Big Brothers Big Sisters Metro Atlanta. Go to our social media channels. We're on all of them. And there's a tab called To Become a Big. You click on that, and it lays out all the steps. And we're doing all that virtually right now. So you can at least go to an orientation, spend an hour online, learning about the program, going in way more detail than I'm going into right now. And you get to ask questions about all the different things you're thinking about. And then you decide from there if there's something you want to continue to move forward with. But go to our website, learn more. We need more bigs, in particular during the times we face.
Yeah, so I thought as a last question for you, Kwame, can you talk about kids you have seen in the program and changes you have seen in them as a result of being mentored by someone? You know, how that relationship affected that child?
Yeah, so I can definitely rattle off that 95% of our kids graduate on time. Over 97% of our kids avoid the criminal justice system, which is near and dear to me. I can tell you all these great results. 95% go to next grade level. But I think about Jamal, who went through our program, was matched with his big. He lived in Decatur, single mom situation, different challenges throughout his life. Went to college, went to Brown University on a scholarship, and now is a buyer at Macy's in New York. And when I first started the organization, we got a call from his mom about him graduating. And she wanted to see if someone from the organization would come to the graduation at his house. And I said, I'll go, And so I went. I didn't realize it was going to be 95 degrees and that they were going to have a party in their garage. It was all good. So, but we had a chance to get to meet each other. I heard his story. And, he's spoken at our events. We have a lot of kids that have come through the program doing great things now that are bigs. I have staff that were littles, now are bigs, and now work at Big Brothers Big Sisters. So just tons of stories, but Jamal definitely pops out. A young Black man now living his dreams and doing big things up in New York City.
That's great. So thank you both so much for being with us tonight. Really interesting. I hope people are inspired to become bigs. I think there really couldn't be anything more rewarding right now as we think about all the changes that have to go on in the world that are policy oriented. This is a chance to affect really another human being. Yes. And I believe that is so important, especially as we think about racial differences. Getting to know someone, for a kid and a big who grows up in a different environment than you do, I mean, that is it at its heart of how we're going to change our society. So thanks you guys so much for being with us. Wanted to talk a little bit about some upcoming programs that we have as part of our campaign for equal dignity. You can go to equaldignity.org and join our campaign and hear about all the upcoming programs. Some things we want to highlight are, we have Art for Equal Dignity, which is a crowd curated art exhibit. We're asking people to showcase an artist or their own artwork that shows empathy and is a catalyst for global change. You can do this on Instagram or Twitter. You share a piece of artwork that's politically meaningful to you, and credit the artist. If it's yourself, of course, credit yourself. Tag it and say what it means to you. What about this image or artwork speaks to you? And you'll see submissions from people around the world have joined this campaign. So that's our hashtag Art for Equal Dignity, or hashtag Equal Dignity. You could find this campaign. We have programs, so every week we send out an email that has actions you can take. There's a checklist there, so you can click on your weekly actions, and once you accomplish the action, you can click a checkbox. I have to say there's something very satisfying right now about being able to accomplish something. And so every week there are 2 or 3 things we ask you to do. Some require a little more energy than others, but you can check the box to say that you have done that action. We have some programs coming up that will be of interest. This Friday night at 7 p.m., Art and Music as Resistance. That program is going to talk about how vital art, music, and creative expression are to social change. Then on August 7th at noon, Eviction, Crisis at the Core of Economic Instability. The federal benefits are going to be ending at the end of this month, which is this week. And so a lot of people who were keeping it together financially because of the benefits they were receiving are now at risk of being thrown out of their homes. And so we're going to talk about eviction, look at the numbers of how many people are at risk for that. And then we're a partner in Equitable Dinners, which is one Sunday a month. A group of people come together virtually over dinner and talk about a different racial equity issue. On August 16th at 5 p.m., it's going to be about housing. Each one of these dinners starts with a commissioned play that's about a 5-minute performance with an actor. And then we have an expert who talks about that issue, and then people can break out into small groups and talk about that issue. They could talk about the performance they saw, they could talk about some aspect of what the expert says, and really probe housing. In this case, it'll be about housing and gentrification and eviction and the range of issues related to housing and racial equity. We also are starting our first film festival. We have 4 films coming up that people can tune into. So if you sign up for the film festival, you don't have to see them all, but any one of them, you'll receive a screener that you'll get a period of time to watch the film. And then we invite you to join us for a conversation about that film. The American Trial is our first one on August 5th. It starts at 7, and it's a really interesting film. Real-life prosecutors and defense lawyers conduct an unscripted mock trial about the NYPD, the New York Police Department officer who was videotaped using a chokehold on Eric Garner in 2014. And in this mock trial, they used the actual evidence, and witnesses appear, and there's expert testimony because this case was never brought to trial. And so the creators of this documentary imagine what it would have been like if this case went to trial. So that's the first film. And then we've got Rigged on August 28th, and that's a documentary about voter suppression. It's narrated by Jeffrey Wright. And so we'll send you a link to the film so you can watch it in advance, and then we'll have a panel discussion about that film. Also upcoming is Good Trouble, and this will end out our 3-film series. This is the life story of Congressman John Lewis, of course, who recently passed. And we're going to talk with a bunch of the people who made that film and talk about the life of John Lewis, and that's on September 9th. We thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and tune in to Campaign for Equal Dignity. Thank you, Kwame. Thank you, Cosmo. And please join us in our Campaign for Equal Dignity, and you can visit us at civilandhumanrights.org. Thanks so much.